Increasingly, conservatives are finding it harder and harder to get their work published by mainstream publishers or sold in high street bookshops. Cancel culture is now everywhere, and its effect has been as rapid as it is sinister. This morning, I want to talk to you about another book, written also by a friend of mine, a book that struggled to find an English publisher. The author's name is Tuvia Tenenbaum. I met him and had lunch with him here in Sydney a couple of years ago. Tuvia is an extraordinary character, in many ways a comic genius, a cross between Sacha Baron Cohen and the filmmaker Michael Moore, with a bit of travel writer Bill Bryson thrown in. Tuvia Tenenbaum is a theatre director, playwright, best-selling author, journalist, essayist, and the founding artistic director of a theatre in New York. He also has degrees in mathematics, computer science, dramatic writing, and literature. He's nobody's fool. For many years, he wrote a regular column in Die Zeit, the German newspaper. And with his blonde hair, pale skin and blue eyes, and let's be frank, rotund figure, most people when they meet Tuvia assume he is German, and he will often introduce himself as such. But that's all part of the act. You see, despite his Hanoverian haircut and Bavarian beer belly, Tuvia is in fact Jewish. But there is a reason he allows people to believe he is German, because, much like Sacha Baron Cohen fooling gullible characters to reveal themselves by pretending to be Borat, or like any undercover reporter, Tuvia has sadly discovered that when they think he's German, anti-Semites can't help reveal what they really think about Jews. Indeed, Tuvia has now made it his mission to root out and expose anti-Semitism wherever it exists, and he's travelled the world doing so. But here's the thing. He does so with the most amazing sense of humour and goodwill. There is no bitterness, just a genuine disbelief at the depths of anti-Semitism and the bizarre ways it manifests itself. This is a man who puts a smile on everybody's face, even those who in reality he should despise. In the process, he has written several entertaining books, including I Sleep in Hitler's Room and Catch the Jew, both which were bestsellers not only in Israel, but interestingly also in Germany. But here's where cancel culture kicks in. Tuvia's 2017 book about anti-Semitism in America failed to find an American publisher because he was told it would upset too many American Jews. And his latest book about anti-Semitism in Britain and Ireland similarly failed to find a British publisher for presumably the same reason. So it's been published in English in Israel by Geffen. It is called, with an appropriate nod to William Shakespeare, The Taming of the Jew. He begins his 7-month tour of Britain and Ireland in Dublin, before heading out into the Bogside in Derry, an area which was a flashpoint for the Troubles during the 1970s, where Tuvia discovers a sleepy little neighbourhood that is full, weirdly, of Palestinian flags and murals. Naturally, he is curious as to why.
Why do you have here, see, let me show you. You have this solidarity with Palestine. What do you have to do with Palestinians in Derry?
I honestly don't know.
May I ask you a question? Why do you have Palestinian flags over there?
Huh?
Why do you have Palestinian flags?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
No, I have no idea.
You have your Palestinian flags. Why that?
Because Palestinian people are fighting for their freedom, and I kind of think it's, when we look back, we have come on so far in the past 40 years of peace process and stuff like that.
Do you also identify with other minorities like Kurds in Kurdistan, Chechens in Chechnya? Do you know anything about what happens in Chechnya? You have no clue. You have no clue. So how come you know only about Palestinians?
No, in saying that, I don't even know what the Palestinian war is about or anything, but I do know the fact that there's children being killed, things being bombed.
Who's killing them? Who's killing them?
Bombs and bullets.
Who is throwing bombs at them?
I haven't a clue.
Who's killing the Palestinians?
Don't ask me.
You don't know?
I haven't a clue. I cannot just...
Are the British killing the Palestinians?
I suppose a lot of people. No, I don't know, no.
So who's killing them?
I haven't a clue.
You know something, you know a little bit.
I don't know a little bit on saying
that. Just the Jews, you mean?
Just
The
what you
Jews.
see on the TV.
Just the Jews, right?
Right. Yeah.
As far as I know, the Jews. But do you see, basically what you see, there is big Palestinian thing over there. Palestinian flag here, Palestinian flag there, Palestinian flag there. A lot of us. So the majority of your sympathies go to Palestinians.
I wouldn't say majority of us. No, it is a big thing because I mean, if you look at what is happening to the Palestinians, you know, I mean, they shoot them down like dogs.
Why is the Palestinian flag?
Yes, why there's so many Palestinian flags
Because we
here?
support Palestine.
But why this fascination with the Palestinian cause over any number of others? There's no place like an Irish pub to loosen lips.
Palestinian flags here. Yeah. Why is that? Because we support them. Why do you support the Palestinians? Because the fucking Jews. Because what?
Because we hate the fucking Jews.
Israelis are scum, killing children, killing women. You're talking about the Jews?
Yes. Hitler
Stealing land too. Stealing all the bastards.
Okay. Stole their land and killed their children. Free Palestine.
The only thing that Hitler didn't do wrong. The only thing Hitler didn't do wrong, he didn't kill enough fucking Jews.
We've since figured that out. We didn't think that at the time, but
Hitler didn't kill enough Jews. The scourge of the world.
what did you say?
The Jews, the scourge of the earth.
The Jews are the scourge of the earth.
Yeah.
Later on, Tuvia meets a lapsed Catholic in Dublin called Mike, who, when Tuvia asks him what is the one issue that unites the Irish, replies that Ireland is the most anti-Israel, anti-Jewish country in Europe, though we pretend that we are just anti-Zionist. Indeed, pretty much everyone Tuvia meets in Ireland, north or south, seems to hate Israel and love the Palestinians, and yet Tenenbaum likes them all and enjoys everything he sees about the Irish. Then it's off to Scotland and the Edinburgh Fringe Comedy Festival, where no venue will admit Israeli acts. In Gateshead near Newcastle, he finds the students at the Jewish religious school there living in constant fear of attack. Tuvia visits an Amnesty International bookstore covered in posters supporting the Palestinian cause that also sells Hitler's Mein Kampf and the vile Protocol of the Elders of Zion because, says the book owner, they're not racist, they are historic. In Manchester, where kosher shops and Jewish bookstores have been firebombed, the Jews Tuvia interviews don't mention it or seem to have forgotten it. Yet when Tuvia digs deeper, he discovers Manchester's Jews under repeated onslaught from physical attacks and verbal abuse. So why the pretense that it isn't happening? As someone admits, it's because it's painful to admit that so many people hate you. Interestingly, Tuvia was in Britain while the controversy over former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn was raging. And he manages to interview him, and he concludes, Jeremy is a really nice man who really doesn't like Jews. But the real issue isn't Corbyn, argues Tuvia, it's the people who are anti-Semites, and it doesn't matter what Jeremy Corbyn is or is not. In what becomes a recurring motif, Tuvia interviews any number of British Jews who reassure him on the record that there is only minimal Jew hatred in the UK, but then completely change their tune off the record. After interviewing one prominent Jewish member of the House of Lords, Tuvia writes, what he then said off the record was exactly the opposite of what he told me on the record. Off the record, he said anti-Semitism is ingrained in British society and in the highest levels of it, the Foreign Office is populated with anti-Israel, anti-Semitic officials, and self-hating Jews lead anti-Semitic political organisations throughout Britain. Baroness Altman, who is Jewish and is prepared to speak on the record, tells Tuvia that, for the first time in my life, I feel threatened as a Jew for my future in this country. If you wish to buy Tuvia Tenenbaum's book, The Taming of the Jew, you will find it at geffenpublishing.com. Regular fans of Outsiders know that I'm a great admirer of the writer Melanie Phillips, and I'm lucky to count her as a friend as well. Melanie maintains she feels safer in Jerusalem than she does in London. As she wrote recently on her blog, which I urge you to visit on melaniephillips.substack.com, Tuvia Tenenbaum's The Taming of the Jew is a pointed, savage, and often comic travelogue about attitudes to Jews in Britain and Ireland. His book lifts a curtain to expose not only anti-Semitism in places where people don't want to admit it exists, but also the often craven attitudes towards it of some diaspora Jews. David Herman writes in the article, what surprises Tenenbaum most about his time in England is that English Jews, even members of the House of Lords, are in denial and don't want to make a fuss. So what is the reality of life for Jews in the UK these days? Well, just last week in Stamford in North London, a pregnant young Jewish woman was walking home at 6:30 p.m. A man, we now know, was following her for over a mile. He crept up on her and, in every woman's nightmare, assaulted her from behind. He tore at her wig, threw a pillowcase over her head and repeatedly punched her in her pregnant belly. The attack on her wig showed he was clearly assaulting her because she is an Orthodox Jew. The blows to her stomach showed he was clearly trying to harm or kill her Jewish baby. That footage we won't show you, but it is there. This is as repulsive and disgusting as you can get or imagine. This is pure, unadulterated, evil anti-Semitism in broad daylight, and this is the repulsive creature responsible. But will he ever be caught or face a court? The London police are still humming and hawing over it and wait for it. They are debating whether the attack was racially motivated. Anti-Semitism is more prevalent now in Europe than since the days of the Third Reich. The unfettered immigration into the West from Islamic majority Middle Eastern nations has fueled antagonism towards Jews in a toxic combination of fundamental Islam and hardcore Marxist left-wing ideology which sees Israel and therefore Jews as white oppressors. The Lovies deny it and many Jews dare not admit it, but anti-Semitism is now embedded in left-wing politics, frequently under the guise, as Tenenbaum proves and shows, of support for the Palestinian cause. Now, obviously, that is not to say that anybody who supports the Palestinian cause is an anti-Semite. Of course not. But it is well established that many anti-Semites hide their hatred of Jews behind a veneer of support for Palestine. Which brings me to Australia. On Tuesday and Wednesday this week, the Australian Labor Party are holding their national conference. It's a Zoom one. According to the Australian newspaper, a stoush is looming over the issue of recognising Palestine. Now, despite Donald Trump's extraordinary success in brokering numerous Middle East peace deals by sidestepping the issue of a Palestinian state, Labor intends to inflame the debate by unilaterally recognising Palestine. David Bliss, a union delegate, will try and soften that resolution by binding a future Labor government to certain conditions before officially recognising Palestine, such as ensuring that the Palestinians actually hold free and fair elections, or ensuring that the Palestinians end the use and abuse of capital punishment, the systematic use of torture and arbitrary arrest, and the repression of political opposition, dissent and free speech. The motion will also insist the right of the State of Israel to exist must be formally acknowledged and all expressions for the destruction of Israel and the extermination of Jews clearly disavowed. The motion will be seconded by former Labor MP Michael Danby. Now, I'm not accusing anyone in the Labor Party in Australia of being anti-Semitic, although some have certainly raised eyebrows in the past. But I will say this, in my opinion, only someone for whom a fanatical hatred of Israel and the Jews is embedded in their support for a Palestinian state could possibly object to those conditions. So, watch this space carefully.